Since Jorge Masvidal retired, the BMF title is back up for grabs.
Justin Gaethje against Dustin Poirier.
There is a lot of ways to come at this because in some ways, right, it's a great fight, but they've both lost to Oliveira, right? So it's like the chance of them actually beating Islam's pretty slim. So the idea of whoever wins this fight might get a title shot anyway is like, it doesn't really mean that much in that context of the division. Typically, the BMF fight doesn't have to mean anything. That's the whole point of the BMF fight. There's no real like context involved.
This whole fucking conversation is actually who gives a shit about the BMF title. I cared about the BMF title when it was Nate Diaz and Masvidal at the fucking pinnacle of their fame fighting each other. But now, to be honest with you, it's a bit drab, isn't it?
I mean, like, drab, what a word.
Well, it's not drab. I mean, a fight with Gaethje and Poirier is never going to be a drab fight, but the concept of it is just a manifestation of who Dana White really wants the lightweight champion to actually be. And do you know what? Here's a fucking belt, like a Fugazi belt that you can have, that you can promote. They can put on posters, but actually it doesn't really mean anything.
It's like the belt for the guys who can't win the belt. It's unfortunately turned into the runner-up prize.
It's the violence participation award.
The whole reason the first BMF title was the BMF title, though, is because it was not just the guys Dana White wants to be champion, but the guys were like the two most popular people.
It's the money belt
in that division. It's the money belt, right?
I mean, people love Gaethje because he's a fucking madman. He'll throw shit to the wind. But you can put a shitload of his highlights on a sick promo, and everyone's going to go, oh, I might check this out.
And he still beats like world-class guys like physique. It just kind of feels like not only do they make the BMF belt because it's two guys they want to be champion, but it's also like, what would you even do with these two guys anyway? Both guys have been in the title picture and now they're not.
To try and keep them relevant, maybe it's about putting a belt on them to try and keep them in the mix, because the reality of it is both of them are big stars, or at least in my opinion. You don't want to lose that star power. You want to try and keep that at the height of what it is, and the best way to do that is maybe putting a title on the line in some sense. That's why this is why the UFC love interim titles. For a long period of time, interim titles were getting thrown in the mix for almost nothing other than the fact that they needed a title to headline a main event. And essentially this is kind of what is happening now with the BMF belt. They're interjecting this belt into these fights to elevate the prestige of the fight itself. If they could put an interim title in there for these guys, I bet you everything I own they would do it. But there's no reason for an interim title at the moment because the champion's active. Charles is getting the #1 contender fight. These guys are just not contenders. So the best way to do that, shove that BMF title in there and let it headline a main event.
In the next fight, will you be taking it out and sort of putting it on the line, or is this sort of a one and done situation in your mind?
Says 1 out of 1. I'm not giving this belt to nobody.
They never stripped Jorge, did they? Because they just said, oh, it's up for grabs
well,
again.
He's retired.
So he was still the BMF. But if we're talking linearly, you know, Kamaru became the BMF, and then Leon became the BMF. You know, we could have Gaethje or Poirier versus Leon Edwards.
Let me just say,
the mega BMF, double BMF.
Yeah. I just want to say for one moment, I'm going to stop hating on this because at the end of the day, it's a pretty good idea. Why the hell not? Does it really matter? No. Does it make the fight more exciting? Kind of. Like, what's the reason to hate on this? They're not like interjecting them in the title picture about who's the best in the sport. It's just for a bit of fun. So I don't really care, to be honest. Give them a BMF title. Who gives a monkeys?
I think despite what we've said and what I've said, I do agree with that sentiment as well. I like the drama in the UFC. If it makes them fight a little bit better, a little bit harder for that belt, then that's only going to be good for us fans.
You could fucking pay them some money for them to fight harder.
No,
I feel like you guys are like...
Whoa. What is bad about this? Why are you so upset that they're using...
Someone who loves fat knockout.
I'm not upset about it. I'm just trying to get to the point of why do it. Why do you need a shiny object to promote Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier? Why do you need
because it sounds cool.
Yeah, bring in the shit munchers.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but yes, basically.
This is what happened for Kamaru Usman as well, though. He looked at Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. He sat there and he's like, well, the fuck, guys? I'm clearly the baddest motherfucker.
Anyone that's champion is better.
It's Dana looking at the current champion in that division being like, you aren't selling me shit, buddy. So I'm going to have to go to the guys that do, give them their own belt and then sell it.
Or you could look on a more positive note And Dana's like, you know what would be fun, guys? I'll throw the BMF title in because that'll make everyone. What a fun idea!
Let's celebrate all the hard work.
Yeah, let's give these guys,
put in.
let's give these guys some acknowledgement for their careers of violence and destruction, and we'll just throw a title in there.
Yeah, or they could give him more money. Dana could be like, do you know what? This is for loads of money, boys.
Yeah. If this isn't a BMF title fight,
I just wouldn't have it.
We wouldn't have one.
I honestly, controversially, I just wouldn't have it.
You are a rumpy old man, aren't you?
Yeah, probably.
BMF champion. It's like, what is that? What weight class is that? Is there a weight class? Like, no one cares. You know, I think it's just something that the promotion hopped on just to kind of try to sell the fight.
You guys are generally really hyped for a BMF belt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good for the sport. Adds more drama, gets people's personalities to the forefront of the sport, which is always good to introduce more people to. Yeah, you could pay them more money. You know, you could give them a #1 contendership, all that. That's great.
If you're asking me if I'm more excited for the fight because the BMF title is on the line, I'm not. It gives them a bit of extra rub.
Do you think a bad motherfucker belt makes the UFC look bad when it's being promoted in the mainstream media? Let's say the BBC. Do you think the BBC are ever going to take the bad motherfucker belt seriously? That's all my hope for MMA is, in its entirety, that one day that we can turn the fucking TV on at 4 p.m. here in the UK and you've got fights on the TV. But do you know what? The BBC are never going to fucking do that when the bad motherfucking belt is what's promoting the fight.
True.
They're not going to do that. They're going to put on fucking Michael Phelps swimming the 100-meter swim. Nobody gives a shit about that.
I think it's trying to hark back to those days where the sport was a bit more rough and ready, trying to capture like the violence in the sport while still under the guise of it being so much of like a commercial product nowadays.
Where I feel like it's much more a modern creation based on like social media society. And Tom's right, it's not going to get respect amongst old broadcasting platforms like the BBC who want traditional sports values. It's much more like, here's something created by hype based around this new era of like promotion we're in. But also I think, mate, if you're the UFC, what a great idea. What a way to promote a fight. I can't go up to Dana White and be like, you're an idiot for making this a BMF fight, because he's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to make loads of extra money.
Well, here's another question for you then as well. How long is it going to be before we see another BMF belt, and then another BMF belt, and then another one, and then all of a sudden they are so common, they're worthless?
We can only go on what we've seen so far, and this didn't come up until Jorge retired. And every time someone beat Jorge, it was always asked, you know, do they get the belt? Or people would bring it up in interviews, and that never happened. We only saw it exchange hands. Well, not yet, but until Jorge retired. So you would think that would be how the belt is passed on. But then again, that still doesn't make sense, because you may as well just have loads of BMF belts, because no one beat Jorge for it. So you may as well just do loads of BMF belts, because just giving it to someone else
about
when they retire.
Yeah. Sprinkle them about. Why
I
not?
think most people don't care about who the BMF is or who the BMF belt goes to.
But that's exactly my point. If people don't care, then what's the fucking point?
I get it,
The point is to get more people watching, and more people watching is always a good thing. It's good for us. It's good for the sport. It's good for the fighters. I just want to see the violence and how good it can be.
And also, actually, what we haven't talked about is, isn't it convenient that this BMF fight got announced as Francis Ngannou also announced that he was going to the PFL?
There's always plausible deniability on the half of the UFC to just be like, no, we just thought we'd show respect to these two fighters and give the fans something fun to cheer over.
Just saying.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that agree with Tom. And I think all the new fans are going to agree with Luke. This is a sport,
goddammit. This should be taken seriously as a sport.
I agree.